Hello. So this time we're going to talk about when Lorgar almost destroyed the Ultramarines. Now, some of you probably already know that there was a huge battle at Calth, which is an Ultramarine world where the Ultramarines were kind of tricked into meeting with the word bearers and at the very beginning of the heresy, and then were attacked. So I'm going to set the scene a little bit of why that happened, how that happened, and then after that we'll go into why that actually led to what could arguably be called the biggest defeat of any of the legions through the heresy period. So the first thing is we go back to before the heresy. Horus is been made War Master, and eventually is going to start to plan the heresy after he starts to go down the road of falling to chaos. So in that position as War Master, he needs to think about how he's going to win the heresy. So he can take advantage of being the War Master and start to maneuver the other legions into positions where they can be either defeated more easily or be isolated, so they can't take part in the heresy at least in the earlier stages. So he can destroy them piecemeal. So the first thing is he knows to a certain degree by the time he actually begins the heresy that which Primarchs and which legions are going to be loyal to him and which ones he definitely aren't going to be loyal to him, and the ones in the middle that he's not really sure about. So the ones that he knows are going to be loyal to him, he doesn't have to worry about. So he just positions them into places where they'll be used to try and bring him back under control by the Imperium, so that when they are sent on that mission to Isfahan to bring him into justice, they'll actually turn at that point and then reveal this big trap and eliminate any of the loyalist legions that are sent. So, but he doesn't know exactly which ones they'll be. So he can make sure that the 4 that are loyal to him will turn up, but he doesn't know which loyalist ones will turn up. So out of the other ones that are left, obviously, and it turns out in the end it's 3 legions: Raven Guard, Iron Hands, and Salamanders that are sent. But it could have been more than that because there are other legions around. So he needs to make sure that as few as possible basically are available, so that he can destroy that force that's sent to him quite easily without losing too many of his own troops. So what he does is, the first thing he does is, well, he makes sure that the White Skulls and the Khan are kept on the very sort of edges of Imperial space, chasing down orcs where they were sent after the triumph at Ulnar. So he just keeps them out, keeps them at a distance, because he doesn't know entirely whether he can rely on the Khan or not. So another one he deals with is Sanguinus and the Blood Angel. So he sends them away on a mission to get into the edges of the Imperial controlled space, into a trap this time. So he's certain that it would be very hard to turn Sanguinus, but he's also worried that if Sanguinus is turned to chaos, that he'd actually rival him for the leadership of the heresy. So he doesn't really want Sanguinus to be turned anyway. He wants Sanguinus to be killed. But he does think it's quite useful to have the Blood Angels turn to Khorne, and then they will be useful allies. But so he sends them away into this trap, basically created by Chaos, with the intention of turning Sanguinus. And again, they're way out on the edges of space, so they're out of the way, and they're kind of blocked off by a psychic barrier that means that there's no way of communicating in or out of this barrier, so they're isolated for the first part of the heresy. Then we already Rogal Dawn and the Imperial Fists are already on Earth, so they're out of the way because the Emperor took them with him when he went back to Earth. So then that leaves the Space Wolves. So the Space Wolves are manipulated and basically tricked by a combination of Horus and Chaos into attacking the Thousand Sons, who are another potential problem. So he's got the Thousand Sons and the Space Wolves fighting each other, basically believing each other are much worse than each of them are. So then you've got the Dark Angels and the Ultramarines left. So, well, he basically then comes up with this plan to keep the Ultramarines out of the way. Now, the Ultramarines are one of the biggest threats to the Heresy because they're the biggest legion. So they've got such huge numbers that they have to be dealt with. Although the Ultramar is kind of on the edge of the Empire, and so they're less likely to really quickly get into a position to threaten him. He does know that he has to deal with them. So what he does is he comes up with a plan where he basically orders Guilliman to muster the entire legion on Calth and wait for Lorgar to turn up with the word-bearers, and together they'll go off and fight some orcs. Now, obviously, that does leave the Dark Angels, but he can't deal with all of them, so he can't come up with plans to sort of get everyone out of the way. So this does leave, but it does leave the Dark Angels, but it also leaves the other 3 legions that would eventually go to Isfahan. So we know, it's possible that the Dark Angels could have gone as well. And that would have been 4 of them. 4 legions would have gone, and he would have just destroyed 4 legions. So he'd have actually probably been better off if that had happened, because that would have got the Dark Angels out of the way. So 4 versus 7, they would have still lost easily in an ambush. In fact, that probably would have been a preferred option for Horus. So going back to the Ultramarines, so they're all mustered on Calth, and this is a lot of Ultramarines. This is their fleet. This is that support them, and it's almost the entirety of Legion, almost every individual legionary. And that works out at around about 250,000 legionaries, give or take. Now, there's a few on special missions, a few doing like training in other places, and that kind of thing. So there's probably a few thousand, maybe 10,000 or at most somewhere else. But he's been ordered to bring the entire legion there. So that Guilliman has been ordered to do that by Horus. So that sets the scene. So we've got the entire legion there waiting on Calth for Lorgar to turn up. What actually happens is Lorgar doesn't turn up. He sends his flunkies instead. Basically, he sends the people he doesn't want to be around, because he realizes that some of his legion are people particularly like Erebus, Corphoron, I think his name is his sort of adopted father. They've gone too far. Basically, they're too obsessed with chaos, and they don't really lord to him anymore. And quite a large number of the word bearers themselves are also have gone too far down this path. They're too fanatical. They're uncontrollable because they're just too far down the path of chaos. So he decides, well, I'll just send all of the people that I'm not sure about their loyalty anymore to go and wipe out the Ultramarines, and keep all the people I can rely on with me, and I'll go on and do other stuff. So he does that, and now the word bearers are the second largest legion, so they are almost as big as the Ultramarines, and that's why one of the reasons Horus just says to Lorgar, can you go and do this mission, destroy the Ultramarines? But also they've got this long-standing rivalry and hatred between them. Guilliman sees this as a kind of a chance to rebuild relationships with Lorgar and the word bearers. So he kind of falls for the trap, hook, line, and sinker. So he's waiting, and then the word bearer fleet turns up, and to cut a long story short, they attack, and they disabled the defense grid of the planet. They destroy a large part of the Ultramarines fleet. Guilliman is nearly killed. His ship is nearly destroyed. It's really going really, really bad. And then they start bombarding the planet. They've got their own troops obviously already on Calth as well, because they're starting to join the Ultramarines for the muster. At least that's what the Ultramarines think. But then they just start attacking the Ultramarines, and it's going really, really bad. And eventually, the planet is almost destroyed. All the surface is absolutely battered. Many Ultramarines are killed in the first attacks, and then there's ongoing fighting. Once the Ultramarines start to realize that they're under attack, they start to recover. But then there's various battles that take place on the surface as they try and not really regain control, because there's no really a chance of that happening. But just to survive, basically, they and to do what they can to make the best of this terrible situation. eventually the staff of the system is essentially poisoned, so that it starts producing massive, terrible levels of radiation. This makes the surface of the planet unlivable, and the battle and the population go underground. And then then after the initial big sort of conflict invasion of the Werberers, that eventually leads to a very long, protracted, several years long conflict of the remaining troops on both sides fighting it out underground in these sort of various just used mines, bunkers, and so on. And during that time, the Ultramarines lose an incredible amount of troops. I mean, I had no idea before reading the book Mark of Calth. I think it's the Mark of Calth, they actually go into the battle. I'm pretty sure it is. The losses that they took it's around about 200,000 legionaries die, which is ridiculous. You think about it. That is more Ultramarines dying in one engagement than any other legion loses throughout the entire heresy. Now, it's fair to say most of the other legions don't have 200,000 legionaries to lose, so that's sort of one way of looking at it. But it's incredible, and it goes a long way to explain why the Ultramarines did almost nothing in the heresy, because they just took this massive hit, and they don't actually ultimately you could say, well, they didn't actually lose because eventually the Werberers are kind of the few run off, the ones that are abandoned on the planet are then eventually defeated over several years, and then so they basically they do lose that engagement essentially. But that's actually what Lorgar planned anyway. He doesn't really care, because as I said, he actually sent the people there that he didn't want anymore. So he's like a no lose situation for him. He manages to massively damage the Ultramarines, and he gets rid of the troublemakers in his legion. So it's for Lorgar, it's a great victory. And he then goes off and ravages the 500 worlds with his best friend. The weird bromance of him and Angron as they go across the 500 worlds, just basically devastating populations and killing people, just torturing and basically trying to create as much suffering as possible to fuel the Werberers like sorcery. So, which probably results in quite a few more Ultramarines dying, although not as many, because most of those worlds don't have any Ultramarines on them, because obviously they're all mustered at Calth. So, but still, some more dying. So, yeah, there you go. So that is the greatest loss of any legion during the heresy period. Even the legions that were wiped out on Isfahan didn't lose that many numbers in terms of individual legionaries, because they didn't have that many to lose. You probably have heard of Calth before, but probably didn't know just how many Ultramarines died there, and how significant that loss was. So thank you for watching. If you can, it'd be great if you could like, share, subscribe, comment, argue a lot in the comments. That'd be great. Let's get this video out there. Thank you very much. See you next time.